The year 2026 may be remembered as the most revealing period in Melanie Martinez's entire career. She released another commercially successful album while the contradictions and serious blaming surrounding her public identity became impossible to ignore that even her entire artistic career has seriously been risked. The year 2026 represented perhaps the most structurally transformative and intellectually revealing period in the public career of Melanie Martinez. Not merely because it marked the release of a new studio album after the commercially successful Portals era, but because for the first time since the beginning of her mainstream career, her artistic direction underwent a philosophical mutation so significant that it fundamentally changed both the function of her music and the nature of the relationship between her audience. The earliest signs of this transformation began to emerge during the opening weeks of 2026, when observers noticed that Martinez had begun quietly dismantling the remaining digital identity associated with her previous Portals era by clearing significant portions of her social media presence. Yet, unlike a routine rebrand designed merely to signal a new album cycle, this process rapidly evolved into a highly calculated dystopian marketing campaign unveiled on January 23rd through a fictional corporate framework titled Hades Tech, an elaborate fictional universe centered around technological surveillance systems and accompanied by the introduction of a synthetic cult-manufactured pop figure named Circle. That transition became publicly undeniable when Martinez officially announced her fourth studio album Hades during early February 2026, an announcement that immediately distinguished itself from every prior release cycle because official framing around the project did not emphasize character storytelling, fantasy narratives, or personal psychological themes traditionally associated with earlier projects such as Crybaby and K-12, but instead presented the record as an examination of destructive patriarchal and corporate systems that quietly shape modern human behavior, while disguising exploitation through structures normalized by society itself. This strategic repositioning became even more obvious through the album's carefully orchestrated rollout process, because rather than waiting for a surprise launch, Martinez initiated a tightly controlled promotional schedule beginning with the January 28th release of the lead single Possession, after which she followed with Disney Princess on February 25th. When Hades was officially released on March 27, 2026 through Atlantic Records, music critics immediately recognized that Martinez had entered the most politically aggressive phase of her career because the project's architecture demonstrated a radical departure from the symbolic ambiguity that had characterized much of her earlier writing. With the album functioning not as a collection of loosely connected songs, but as a dense 70-minute double album constructed around an intentionally dystopian worldview, reinforced through dark pop and trip-hop production designed collaboratively with CJ Baran while incorporating substantial creative input from Halo Boy alongside producers Malay and Justin Greenwood, resulting in a sonic environment far heavier and more industrial than anything present during previous eras. The defining controversy surrounding Melanie Martinez's entire 2026 career emerged through one specific track whose public consequences rapidly overshadowed the album itself, because the Vatican immediately became the most intensely debated release attached to her name in years, due to the fact that unlike previous controversies where provocation remained hidden beneath symbolic theatricality, this song directly targeted institutional religion by centering its criticism around historical abuse scandals connected to the Catholic Church and the protection of institutional authority at the expense of vulnerable victims. Entertainment media quickly recognized the explosive potential of the subject matter, but the backlash accelerated dramatically, particularly controversial lines such as Catholic Christian kissing Jesus, licking AR-15s, wording that intentionally fused religious symbolism with violent political imagery. However, the backlash became significantly more complex, leading to a second wave of criticism claiming that the controversy itself may have been partially manufactured as a marketing strategy intended to generate outrage-driven publicity rather than purely ideological expression. As public backlash surrounding the Vatican intensified throughout late March and early April, Melanie Martinez moved quickly to publicly clarify the intended meaning behind the song by explaining that her criticism was directed directed not toward faith as a spiritual concept, but specifically toward institutions capable of weaponizing religious authority to conceal abuse. Yet rather than reducing controversy, these clarifications prolonged the media cycle because the discussion itself gradually expanded beyond the song and became absorbed into broader public debates surrounding censorship, artistic responsibility, and the increasingly political role musicians now occupy within modern cultural discourse. However, one of the most fascinating contradictions surrounding this entire period was that while Hades aggressively positioned itself as a critique of exploitative systems embedded inside corporate capitalism, a growing number of long-term fans had already begun questioning whether Martinez herself had become increasingly entangled in the very commercial structures her work now condemned, a tension that did not originate during the Hades era but had in fact been building throughout the previous Portals cycle, where serious dissatisfaction emerged after fans discovered that premium VIP packages costing roughly $400 had been marketed ambiguously enough to create expectations of genuine personal interaction, despite ultimately delivering only digital green screen hologram experiences featuring Martinez's alien creature persona rather than actual face-to-face meet and greets, a revelation that triggered accusations that premium emotional access to the artist was being monetized through misleading promotional language. These frustrations worsened when consumers began publicly criticizing the declining quality of expensive merchandise associated with the Portals era after reports surfaced describing manufacturing defects affecting shirts sold for approximately $45. Paraffin wax candles priced around $75 that melted during ordinary summer transit conditions, and premium perfume containers advertised as higher-end collectible glass products that many buyers later claimed were manufactured using cheaper plastic materials inconsistent with their pricing structure. Although these controversies technically originated before 2026, their continued circulation significantly altered the context through which many observers interpreted the Hades era because they created growing skepticism toward an artist now publicly condemning exploitative systems while simultaneously facing accusations of increasingly aggressive monetization directed toward her own audience, particularly after environmental critics revisited Backlash connected to her earlier Cyberbaby toy shop NFT project launched through the Ethereum blockchain, a decision many observers considered deeply inconsistent with her environmentally conscious public persona due to the enormous carbon footprint associated with blockchain systems during that period. Although Martinez attempted to defend the project by partnering with carbon offset initiatives intended to compensate for emissions, critics argued that offsetting environmental damage did not fundamentally prevent ecological harm, and instead represented another example of symbolic ethical branding failing to align with material business decisions. Similar criticism emerged when observers highlighted the contradiction between Martinez's socially conscious rhetoric and her extended time spent recording and vacationing in Hawaii during a period when indigenous Hawaiian communities were publicly urging wealthy tourists and celebrities to avoid visiting the islands due to worsening housing shortages, economic instability, and rapidly escalating homelessness, resulting in accusations that despite frequently positioning herself as politically aware and socially conscious, by the time Hades arrived, these unresolved tensions had already created an environment in which audiences increasingly evaluated not only the content of her art, but also the degree to which her real-world actions aligned with the political values her music now openly promoted. During April 2026, Martinez capitalized on the enormous attention surrounding Hades by initiating a series of highly theatrical early performances built specifically around the new era. Performances which critics immediately described as ritualistic because, unlike conventional pop concerts centered primarily around choreography or entertainment spectacle, these early shows deliberately functioned as extensions of the album's dystopian philosophical universe by transforming live performance into a multimedia continuation of the project's ideological framework. Yet even this expansion introduced another fascinating contradiction, increasingly discussed by critics observing her career, because while Hades presented itself as an aggressive critique of patriarchal and corporate systems governing modern society, The entire album cycle itself remained deeply dependent upon the very commercial machinery necessary to sustain large-scale modern pop production, requiring corporate label financing, premium physical vinyl variants, high-capacity arena ticketing structures, expensive collectible merchandise, and large distribution networks identical to the systems her own lyrics frequently framed as exploitative. This created perhaps the most intellectually fascinating paradox of the entire Hades era, because Martinez had effectively positioned herself as an artist attempting to critique capitalism, while simultaneously transforming anti-capitalist rebellion itself into a premium commercial product distributed through traditional capitalist infrastructure. The controversy surrounding the Vatican returned to the center of public discourse in May 2026 when Martinez officially pushed the track as a promoted single on May 22nd. A decision that immediately reignited media coverage because until that point, many observers had assumed the controversy existed primarily as an unintended byproduct of the album release cycle. Whereas elevating the song into an official standalone single communicated something significantly more deliberate, namely that Martinez had absolutely no intention of distancing herself from criticism, and instead appeared willing to intensify controversy even further, despite already understanding how polarizing public response had become. By June 2026, the commercial expansion of the Hades era continued accelerating when Martinez publicly confirmed supporting artists for the North American leg of Hades. The Sacrifice Tour, announcing performers including Isabel La Rosa together with alternative act Hote and Freddie, while signaling that preparations for what had already become the largest live production of her career were entering their final stage. Although public attention shifted abruptly only days earlier due to the sudden death of former partner and artistic collaborator Oliver Tree, whose fatal accident rapidly became one of the most unexpected entertainment stories of the month. Early reports confirmed that Tree died on June 14th at age 32 after a Bell 206B Jet Ranger 3 helicopter, reportedly operating illegally as an unlicensed air taxi connected to private aviation companies StarVP and Helivep, collided mid-air before crashing catastrophically into an electric vehicle dealership parking area where approximately 20 vehicles were destroyed on impact, and all 6 individuals on board died instantly. Amid this rapidly escalating speculation, Martinez posted a public Instagram tribute in which she described herself as emotionally devastated while praising Tree's unwavering commitment to artistic independence, an event that temporarily interrupted months of discussion surrounding controversy, ideology, and commercial reinvention, while reminding audiences that beneath one of the most politically confrontational periods of her career, deeply personal tragedy had unexpectedly entered the public narrative. Taken as a whole, the first half of 2026 demonstrated that Melanie Martinez had entered perhaps the single most revealing and contradictory period of her professional life, because unlike earlier eras where her artistic identity depended primarily upon imaginative world-building, surreal aesthetics, and autobiographical explorations of trauma translated through fictional narratives, the defining story of Melanie Martinez in 2026, therefore, was not simply that she released another successful album or entered another visually ambitious era, but that she attempted something far more dangerous by transforming herself from an alternative pop artist historically associated with metaphorical storytelling into a creator openly weaponizing mainstream pop music as a vehicle for direct structural critique. The most intellectually fascinating question surrounding her entire 2026 career may not concern whether Hades succeeded artistically, but whether modern artists operating inside corporate entertainment structures can ever authentically critique the systems financing their own existence. A tension that now defines not only the future trajectory of Melanie Martinez herself, but perhaps the increasingly contradictory reality of modern pop stardom as a whole. If you liked the video, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. Write your thoughts and facts you found interesting in comments, as well as the topic you would like to see in the next videos.